Effects of water pollution. Water pollution has been an issue that we have been dealing with for decades. Effects of water pollution on our health and our environment cannot be ignored. Water is one of the most valuable resources on Earth, so we should be doing everything in our power to protect it. In this blog post, I will discuss what water pollution is, where it comes from, how it harms us and the environment. Effects of water pollution on human health. Water pollution can have serious implications on the human body. Harmful toxins from water that is not purified properly could lead to illness, like parasites and hepatitis A. Children are especially susceptible because their little bodies cannot handle as much of these poisons without getting sicker faster than adults do. They're still developing. Adults who work in slaughterhouses or around animals may also be at risk for some illnesses due to bacterial diseases such as Salmonella. The EPA estimates about 1 billion cases of diarrhea each year worldwide stem from unsafe drinking water, so it's important we take care with our tap supply and filter out any contamination before use if necessary. An important issue with water pollution is the effects on human health. Water that contains heavy metals and toxic chemicals can cause a variety of problems ranging from skin irritation to cancer, when consumed or inhaled over long periods of time in large quantities by those who are exposed regularly. This type of contamination poses a major threat for developing countries because they lack access to safe drinking water sources which might be available elsewhere, such as filtered tap water systems or natural springs combined with pipes designed not only to protect its purity but also ensure equal distribution throughout the population's homes. Effects of water pollution. Effects of water pollution on animals. Recent studies have shown that effects of water pollution is significantly impacting animal populations. Pollution in the form of chemicals, sewage runoff and other human-made pollutants cause a variety of diseases to infect animals such as frogs, fish or turtles, which then leads them either die directly or be killed by predators due to their inability to escape from hunting grounds when they are too sickly. This causes many species population levels to dwindle within certain bodies of water, with some eventually being forced into extinction because humans do not take care enough about our environment for future generations. The recent research conducted on polluted waters has discovered disturbing data regarding how it affects creatures living there. Frogs get fungi growing inside their delicate skin, fish can't smell prey anymore so can't hunt effectively. Scientists have recently found that water pollution can be harmful to animals. A recent study was conducted by researchers from the University of Leicester in England, who monitored a colony of great tits for 2 years and found those living near polluted streams were more likely to die than their counterparts nesting close to cleaner waterways. Effects of water pollution. Effects of water pollution on plants. The chemical composition of water pollution can have a detrimental effect on plants. Pollution such as high levels of nitrates, for example, cause the root system to be stunted and affect overall plant health by impairing photosynthesis while also allowing microorganisms access to sensitive parts like leaves where they may infect or damage them. The water pollution is slowly killing all the plants in my town. I wake up every day and there are less flowers outside of my home than yesterday, or even last week at this time. It's a sad sight to say the least because so many people walk by without saying anything when they see how quickly our environment has been polluted with trash on streets and more importantly in waterways around us everywhere we look. We're lucky if you can find one tree that hasn't died yet, but it will get worse before it's better unless something changes soon for sure. Effects of water pollution on climate change. The effects of water pollution on climate change are wide-reaching and can be devastating. Climate scientists have been studying the correlation between chemicals found in rainwater, like nitrates and heavy metals that come from industry or agriculture practices, as well as products such as fertilizers which run off into waterways, to see if there is a link with increased greenhouse gas emissions over time. Water pollution has many consequences for our environment due to it being an endless cycle. Once pollutants enter one body of water, they will eventually find their way back out into other bodies through runoff caused by precipitation storms after eroding topsoil during flooding events, and future floods. Pollution causes things like fish kills when excessive amounts get absorbed via the gills. Water pollution is one of the major causes for climate change. The pollutants act as a blanket, trapping heat and radiating back into Earth's atmosphere. This process releases carbon dioxide, which contributes to climate change. Additionally, water contamination leads to an increase in greenhouse gas emissions such as methane from decomposing organic matter that would normally be eaten by bacteria living on land, or dissolved oxygen levels due to algae blooms during droughts. Effects of water pollution on ecosystem. We often hear about the devastating consequences of effects of water pollution on our environment, and we know that it is happening, but what can be done to reverse the effects? Pollution in bodies of water causes an imbalance among all living things. This act tends to have a more adverse effect than other types such as air or soil contamination because aquatic organisms are already at risk for extinction from habitat loss and climate change. Fortunately, there's hope. There are many ways you can help reduce these negative effects of water pollution by doing your part, like recycling plastics when possible, using products with less packaging material, which will then make them easier to recycle, planting native species near waterways, not dumping chemicals into storm drains which eventually lead back out again, even just changing light bulbs over regular. Water pollution is one of the most destructive pollutants in a natural ecosystem. The typical culprits are oil spills, toxic chemicals and fertilizers from runoff or agricultural operations, all which can have devastating effects when they enter water systems near streams, wetlands and rivers. A decrease in aquatic life will be seen first as insects like mayflies stop being born because their food source disappears, with clear running waters becoming murky ones filled with algae blooms that poison other forms of life below them. As you might imagine, this causes an exponential effect to ripple through entire ecosystem. Effects of water pollution on aquatic life. The water in our rivers, lakes and oceans are becoming more polluted by the day. All around us we see pollution seeping into waterways from overflowing landfills or leaking sewage pipes. The runoff carries with it toxic chemicals that have been released during various industrial processes such as mining, manufacturing plants, oil drilling, you name it. These pollutants infiltrate aquatic life through ingestion of contaminated food sources like plankton, which then causes a slow death over time due to lack of oxygen within their bodies because they can't process all these toxins being dumped into them on top of what's already naturally present in the environment. Pollution affects marine organisms, causing disease and death threats not only for other animals but also humans who consume those fish products without knowing how much chemicals are present in them. Effects of water pollution on aquatic life is devastating. Fish populations are decreasing, and so is the number of species in existence today because it's difficult for fish to survive when they're surrounded by polluted water, which contains high levels of toxins that poison them or inhibit their ability to eat properly. The chemicals found specifically in herbicides like Roundup increase the risk of some cancers as well as damage internal organs such as kidneys if consumed over a long period of time. Effects of water pollution on agriculture. Pollution in water can have serious effects on crop production. The quality of the soil is also important, and as more pesticides are used to grow crops with a short growing season, this will only worsen. Farmers should be responsible for making sure that they use practices which do not harm their environment or future generations' ability to produce food sustainably. The effects of water pollution on agriculture are significant. With the increasing population and demand for food, farmers need their land to produce as much crop output per acre as possible in order to meet this increased demand. However, due to agricultural runoff that is contaminated with pesticides or fertilizers from farms upstream, many downstream areas become unusable farmland because they have been rendered infertile by these chemicals seeping into them over time. Effects of water pollution on global warming. Water pollution is a major contributor to global warming. Pollution can take many forms, including chemicals and waste released into the water supply from industry or agriculture, as well as animal excrement that flows into rivers and lakes. When these substances mix with organic matter in bodies of fresh water such as streams, ponds, reservoirs, wetlands and estuaries, they produce levels of oxygen-depleting algae blooms which suffocate fish populations by using up all available nutrients needed for plant growth, just like an overgrowth on your garden leaves. In addition to this effect on biodiversity and freshwater ecosystems, there are also significant impacts to air quality when rain washes some pollutants off roofs or other structures onto roads where vehicles then spread them through their exhausts across. Do you know what the most important thing is when it comes to global warming? It's not carbon emissions. No, that would be your car and home appliances like air conditioning units polluting our skies with toxic gases while we turn a blind eye in an effort to keep up appearances for one another. The real problem people don't talk about enough are water pollution effects on climate change, because they're too busy telling themselves lies as if everything will magically get better someday soon or some other day far from now, so long as they can just make their way through today without ever having to face reality of this situation head on by making any changes at all. Effects of water pollution. Effects of water pollution on economy. Polluted water can have serious negative effects on the economy, not just by polluting sources of natural beauty and drinking water but also through its ability to damage crops. Pollution is a problem for many areas in developing countries like Bangladesh, where people are forced to wear face masks when they go outside because there's so much air pollution indoors from cooking fires that it's safer out there. Effects of water pollution can be devastating to an economy. The most recent data from the United Nations Environment Programme show that about 1/3 of all people worldwide lack access to clean drinking water, and another 2 billion do not have sanitation facilities in their homes or environments, leading them into a cycle of poverty where they are unable to pay for running water services. When fresh water supplies become too polluted with fecal matter and bacteria, this leads Americans right back into relying on bottled water companies, which is costly financially as well as environmentally, over 40% more expensive than tap water per gallon. In 2015, it was estimated by EcoWatch that U.S. use alone accounted for 381 million single-use plastic bottles discarded every day. Effects of water pollution on ozone layer. In recent years, the ozone layer has been under attack. However, a new study by scientists at MIT may have found an answer to this problem: water pollution. Researchers discovered that when large amounts of fresh water flows into oceans and lakes, it can disrupt natural currents in those areas, which causes deoxygenation as well as high levels of nitrogen oxide, NOx, gases from chemical reactions with sunlight. These two things could be potentially damaging for ocean life but also for humans who depend on drinking clean air and safe food sources, because pollutants then seep up through our groundwater tables or get caught in rain clouds before they reach ground level where people are living. When these volatile gases react together with NOx gas particles like nitrous acid, they cause the ozone layer to deplete. An obscure connection between the ozone layer and water pollution was discovered by a couple of researchers studying ice cores from Greenland. They found that nitrogen compounds in polluted air, which is also responsible for acid rain, are able to travel up into the atmosphere, where they react with certain types of atmospheric molecules called nitrates, thus destroying them before they reach their destination, the stratosphere. With less protection against solar radiation coming through, it means more climate change, leading to effects on plants and animals below as well as those we depend on like fisheries or agriculture. This is just one example out there about how not taking care can have devastating consequences if you don't get involved. Effects of water pollution on acid rain. The water we drink is heavily polluted with runoff from agricultural chemicals and heavy metals. The pollution in the waterways of our nation has led to an increase in acid rain, which can be damaging for humans and wildlife alike if it rains on plants or soil that are not disease resistant. The water pollution that is sweeping through our streams and rivers affects the acid rain in a number of ways. Not only does it contribute to the overall level of acidity, but also increases the concentrations by transporting acidic chemicals from other sources into waterways, where they are then transported back up as precipitation or snowfall. This can lead to both localized problems such as chemical spills and more global changes like increased emissions, which will have consequences for all life on Earth. Effects of water pollution on non-living things. Many people know about how pollution affects marine life. But did you know that it can also affect rocks on land? Pollution is a major issue in our water systems, and the various chemicals that are used to clean those waters cause significant problems for rock formations, creating weak spots where cracks form as they slowly erode away at them over time. This leads to an entire ecosystem being disrupted, with all sorts of implications we may not be able to predict just yet. If there's anything more important than keeping your hands off coral reefs, it should probably be taking care of these fragile stone structures too. The pollution of water has had major effects on many mountain ranges and ecosystems. For example, in the past 2 decades alone, more than 40% of California's streamflow have been redirected from natural sources to support human needs for drinking water or agricultural irrigation. This not only impacts our environment but also hurts wildlife that depend on these watersheds for survival, such as salmon, who are critical to sustaining a healthy ecosystem.